If you don't already know who I am, my name is Jameson, and of course I'm a senior at T. I've grown up in the Tahoe and Truckee area, a place where wildfires are a known thing every single season. So, if you know me, you know all I ever want to do is go ride my bike. Whether it's just a nice pedal after school or a weekend-long race for national points, it's all I ever want to do. No matter if it's nice and sunny out or if it's cold and wet, I'll be out there. Because of this, the forest and the trails and recreation areas are a huge part of my day-to-day life. Over the past years, I've seen wildfires shut down whole zones of mountain biking, destroy whole neighborhoods, and impact the community that I'm a part of. I believe it's the combination of my passion for mountain biking and my experience with wildfires that has led me to pursuing this project. So, you may be wondering why this actually matters. Well, here's a bit of context. Over the past decade or so, wildfires have been increasing in size, intensity, and frequency incredibly rapidly. All around the world, but especially in states near the West Coast like California and Oregon, where we live. This isn't just an environmental issue. Wildfires affect everyone and everything, from our communities, firefighters, ecosystems, and recreational areas. I've seen this firsthand. All of the pictures you see up here are from the neighborhood in South Lake where I grew up. The one on the right is a place called Celio Ranch, right at the end of my street, maybe 500 yards from my house. You can see the old barn with what used to be a forested mountain literally on fire behind it. A few years back in 2021, the Caldor fire started down in the valley and made its way over the Sierras, torching my childhood ski resorts here at Tahoe on the way, and finally making it into the Tahoe Basin, into Christmas Valley. All of a sudden, you couldn't see the sky, ash falling and covering the yard, fire trucks and bulldozers from all over the states patrolling your streets. Luckily, our house and most of my neighbors' houses were not affected, but the area was. The trees were gone. My childhood treehouse and trails in the meadows and hills nearby were gone. Real trails that you couldn't even see anymore, and of course all the toothpick-looking trees covering the mountains. After being evacuated for weeks, we were finally let back in. This was also the week that I started at T. While we still had our home, the meadows and forests and mountains around it will never be the same. Although, when I started this project, I did want to explore the problem, I also wanted to find a possible solution motivated by my experiences and joining two of my biggest passions, mountain bike trails as a wildfire buffer zone. So, climate change and deforestation are huge contributors to the increase in wildfires. As temperatures rise and forests become more dense because of fire suppression, fires are burning hotter and spread much faster. This then creates huge risks for communities, wildlife, ecosystems, and so much more. In areas like the Sierra Nevada, we're seeing the effects of this more than ever. Now, if you take a look at the larger picture to the right here, you can see a map. Sorry to anyone who may be far back, but this is a map from Watch Duty. But don't worry, all the green marks are just currently active, private, or prescribed burns. But on the slightly darker side of the map, you can see all the shaded gray areas. These are historical wildfire burn scars. Now, it may seem like a lot since that shaded gray area is covering a very large part of Northern California. But this is only a map of the last 5 years. It's also only a map of California. According to CAL FIRE, California in the last 5 years has had thousands of fires each year, burning hundreds of thousands of acres a year. So I hope that puts a couple things maybe a bit more into perspective. This huge issue, combined with my huge passion for mountain biking, led me to ask the question of how can trails act as buffer zones to help guide, block, and prevent devastating wildfires, and how can different organizations work together to make this happen? I also had some guiding questions that helped me stay focused on my topic. Who can I work with to make this happen? How can trail organizations and fire agencies collaborate? And where should these buffer zones be placed for maximum effectiveness? Both the essential question and the guiding questions were made pretty early on in the planning of this project to try and help guide my focus for research and help me find the right people or experts or websites to help really focus in on my project. My research mainly focused on wildfire behavior, specifically near the Sierra Nevada, to get a better idea for the area where I'll be able to study and actually complete my project in. The Sierra Nevada has experienced some of the California's most destructive fires in recent years, including the Dixie Fire in 2021, which burned nearly 1 million acres, and, as I mentioned earlier, the Caldor Fire, which burned more than 220,000 acres. I also researched deforestation and forest management, learning that decades of fire suppression have left many forests overcrowded with dense vegetation and excess fuel fuel. In addition, I studied trail systems and how properly maintained recreational trails can improve forest access, support emergency response, and potentially serve as fuel breaks or vegetation management corridors. Through my research, I've found that deforestation plays a major role in climate change and wildfire intensity. Organizations like the World Wildlife Fund and the United Nations Environment Program explain how removing forest increases carbon emission and reduces the planet's capability to regulate the heat. World data shows that millions of hectares of forest are lost each year. I also learned from researchers like Robert E. Kian that fuel load, the amount of burnable material that's on the forest floor, is one of the most important factors when determining how intense a fire will be. Throughout my research, one of the most important things I found was that most forests today are overgrown because of years of fire suppression. For much of the 20th century, federal policy focused on extinguishing fires as quickly as possible, especially after the devastating 1910 Big Burn, which burned about 3 million acres across the western United States, and led agencies to prioritize total suppression. According to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, this buildup leads to more extreme and dangerous wildfires. Historically, fires used to burn much more frequently, but much less intensely, just getting rid of little overgrown areas on the forest floor. Now, because of fire suppression, when fires get started, they often have more than 100 years of buildup and accumulated vegetation and dense forest growth to use as fuel. I also discovered the idea of fire-hardened trails from the Sierra Butte Trail Stewardship. You can see a picture of their planned zone on here. These are mountain bike trails that act as vegetation management corridors by reducing fuel loads through thinning, pruning, and controlled burns. This concept directly connects to my topic. For my fieldwork for my Capstone project, I decided to travel across the world to Queenstown, New Zealand. I was on this fieldwork from the 27th of February to the 13th of March. I traveled to New Zealand completely solo, flying to Christchurch, taking a bus up to Queenstown, and using my bike to get around everywhere from there. This experience was incredible and amazing in every way, and it gave me the chance to fully explore and experience the environment and how trail systems, builders, and so much more function in a completely different part of the world. Now, if you're wondering why I chose Queenstown for my fieldwork, here's why. I chose Queenstown because during our winter, it's their summer. They have a huge and very strong biking culture and trail network surrounding the whole place. It also does face risk of wildfires in the dry season, similar to the US. In certain parts of New Zealand, they can experience around 4,000 vegetation fires each season, and around 6,000 hectares of land is burned each year. Now, this may not seem as much as California, sure, but there is a lot less forested land than the mountains of the Sierra Nevada. So all of this combined made Queenstown a perfect spot for my fieldwork and also an incredible time. During my fieldwork in Queenstown, I saw many things. For example, how many of the trail systems are managed. Further, the Queenstown Trail Trust is an organization that is based in Queenstown and focuses on maintaining and building trails in the Queenstown area. I got to speak to Mark Williams from the Queenstown Trail Trust about how for some of their newer projects, they're making trails that fit into the wilderness and are protecting forest health. This is something that encouraged me to keep going with my project, and is also something that I believe could be adapted and transformed into a fire buffer zone. During my fieldwork, I got to speak with trail builders, like many volunteer workers from the Queenstown Mountain Bike Club, many bike shops including Tom Woods from Outer Box Mechanics, and some other local organizations. While on the trip, when biking, I got to observe trail design, vegetation management, how the trails interact with each other, and much more. I also spent tons of time around town meeting great people and seeing how some other people interact with the environment as well. Although the whole entire fieldwork trip was incredible, there were a few things that were extra memorable. Things like riding Corona Peak Bike Park and Skyline Bike Park and trails around town was one of the best riding experiences I've had in my life. Also being able to meet people from all over the world, all doing different and interesting things. And of course learn about how trails in the forest is managed in such a different part of the world, but has so many things so similar to the place and town that I've grown up in. So, for my final answer to my essential question earlier on, is that after this whole project, is that trails can act as effective wildfire buffer zones by reducing and managing fuel loads, creating accessible routes in emergency situations, and help guide fire behavior when properly designed and maintained. This has now led me to my final product. For my final product, I plan on creating a fire-hardened buffer zone around mountain bike trails. To start, these zones would mostly be created on existing trails, but hopefully and possibly as years pass, they'll be integrated into the creation of new trails. These buffer zones would reduce fuel loads by clearing vegetation around trails, maintaining space around trees, and creating accessible pathways for firefighters in an emergency. All of this together would help slow the spread of fires, as well as make a huge help to protecting against them in emergencies. In the real world, this solution could and will help protect communities, preserve recreational areas, support firefighters, and much more. It also promotes a balance between environmental conservation and outdoor recreation. So, if you'd just love to be a part of this, come help. I'm planning on having some volunteer trail dig days with our local trail advocacy groups to put these buffer zones in. Keep an eye out for updates on specific dig day dates from Truckee Dirt Union, Truckee Trails Foundation, Tahoe Donner, Tamba, as well as Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship. Even if you just show up for a bit, I can promise you that you will have some fun and meet some great people. If you're not up for a full-on dig day, no problem, but I urge you to get in contact with your local organization, as they are continually doing amazing work. I've had countless trail days with Truckee Dirt Union, Tamba, and Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship throughout my life. Even from a little kid working on a new bike park down in South Lake to creating whole new sections of trail in the past years in Downeyville and Truckee. And I will continue to be at as many volunteer days as I can possibly make it to. So yes, this trip was incredible. One of the best I've ever been on. Would I change just about anything about it if I were to do it again? Probably not. But does that mean that all the planning for everything was easy and perfect? Definitely not. This whole entire project was amazing. Some examples were the traveling independently. I had so much fun doing this and being able to be on my own time. But as you've heard already, the fieldwork went great. I learned a lot, met a ton of great people, and had an amazing experience. Although there were some things that were hard, such as the planning. I had to make sure I had everything, from proof of money to parental consent forms to proof of stay, like literal receipts of the hostels I was staying at, to make sure I was able to get through the country smoothly. And then there was also the difficulty of planning an actual day to meet with my experts. Some of them weren't available the whole entire time on the trip, so I had to go through email. And some were only available certain days because of their work schedule. So I had to switch some days around and go when it worked for them. Although there were some slightly difficult things I had to deal with, I wouldn't have done it any other way, and it was absolutely incredible. And I'm incredibly thankful to everyone who played a huge role in making this happen. There was quite a bit of growth through this project as well. One of the biggest things was the independence. I mean, I went pretty much across the world by myself. But this taught me how to plan by myself and for myself, how to manage my time and make sure I would have enough to get on the bus or on the plane. I got better at communication with knowing when to text my OSIC who was back home and knowing who to contact if anything might have happened, as well as reaching out and meeting so many great, incredible, and cool people, whether they related to my project or not. So, wildfires are a natural part of the ecosystem. They always have been, and they always will be. By combining recreation and land management, we can create solutions that will benefit both people and the environment. Instead of seeing trails as just recreation after this project, I'm now seeing them as tools that will help protect our forest and our communities. And I hope you can help and try and see them in the same way. So real quick, before I wrap things up, I'd like to give a quick thank you. I'd like to give a huge thank you to everyone. This includes, of course, my parents for being cool with me traveling across the world by myself, but also a huge thank you to everyone at T. Larry for approving this very far field work and being so excited about it. All my teachers for the support, especially since I did travel for a good bit longer than just the 1 week we were given. Andy for the continued support through the start of this project to the end and making sure everything works out and I get everything done, as well as being there for me and everyone else if we needed anything or if anything ever happened. And especially a huge thank you to Hannah, who's not here today, but she helped me with literally everything on this throughout this project. And you might not believe it, but at the start of this project, I wasn't even thinking of going anywhere. I was thinking of just staying around here and working with trail groups here. But she pushed me to use it the time and try and do something. Not sure if she expected New Zealand, but she played a huge role in me getting this done and making it so amazing. So thank you so much for listening. And now, does anyone have any questions?